Ryan thinks he can win an argument against me, but little does he know, I can do this all day. Hello, interwebs, and welcome to Close Up. I'm your co-host, Joe, and I can't speak.
And I'm Sally, your other co-host, Ryan.
Today,
problem with this show, he always speaks first, and I can't come up with a comeback fast enough.
Today, Ryan and I are going to be holding another debate. Probably going to be a heated one. He usually is. Today, the topic is, which Captain America movie is best? I'm on team First Avenger. I didn't ask what team he's on. I assumed it was obvious, but let's see.
Well, I had a dumb idea off the top of my head was I could just do the simple thing and go with everybody's pick, or I could do the dumb thing and say that both Winter Soldier and one of my personal favorites, Civil War, are a better Captain America movie. But then I did a quick think, and I was like, Civil War is not really a Captain America movie. It's Avengers 2.5. So I will just simply do the argument of that Winter Soldier is a better Captain America movie.
We're going to start this debate with a compromise and say that Civil War is the worst Captain America movie because it's barely a Captain America movie. It is, in fact, Avengers 2.5, and it barely rates as a trilogy because of that, personally.
Barely.
Just because it's, him and Bucky or a through line, whatever. I'm not even, Civil War I have mixed opinions on. I
love it.
It goes down. It goes down in my rankings every time I watch it. It tries to take on. I think
that's just because Captain America. You love Captain America so much, and you just wish he had his own trilogy.
I wish there was a little more focus, even if it was. Iron Man is one of the best parts about that movie, and I'm glad he had such a big part in it. The Battle of Ideals is very important, but it lost the focus. Don't call it Captain America. It's the same kind of problem I have with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The movie where Doctor Strange wasn't really the main character and they barely explore the multiverse. Don't call it Captain America Civil War if it's not
Don't
really
call it the
about,
multiverse.
Yeah, if it's not really about Captain America and Civil War is literally just one scene. Okay, two scenes. It's the rest of it's about Zemo plotting to break the Avengers up. Anyway, we're going to debate First Avenger versus Winter Soldier today. So, before getting into any of that, let's zoom into our medium shot. What was your first exposure to the Captain America character?
I believe it was probably in one of the Ultimate Alliance games, or was one of the animated movies of the Avengers before the MCU really took off. Yeah. That was when in that animated movie it had Ant-Man and the Wasp in it from the start. It had a full-on Russian Black Widow.
Nice.
I don't know if you would remember it, but they fight the Chitauri in that movie as well. The Hulk is just full-on a rage monster. He literally can't be controlled. So I remember, watching that movie being like, okay, this is who Captain America is. He's the leader. He's the guy everybody looks to. He's the Boy Scout. So that was my exposure to who Captain America was.
My first time that I remember seeing Captain America in earnest was Ultimate Alliance, specifically that opening cutscene where I think it's Captain America, Spider-Man, Thor, and Wolverine. Yeah. Is the four of them trying to just wreck I think it's the robots on the helicarrier to defend them. That's the first time I remember seeing Captain America. I think I knew who he was before that. He's just the guy with the
frisbee.
The guy with the shield. It's like, okay, who's super American and patriotic and square-jawed action hero, eat your vegetables, that kind of guy. I didn't really have any. That was how I thought of Captain America for most of my childhood.
He definitely eats his vegetables.
Yeah. I'm like, this is lame. I'm a Canadian kid. I don't need this American propaganda in my house. I don't care. I want no part of it. But that was that was my childhood. But then, getting into our close up now, then came Captain America: The First Avenger, and basically overnight turned Captain America into one of my favorite characters in all of entertainment. And first of all, what I'll say is this movie was a big risk right off the hop, because Phase 1 Marvel was still unproven. They don't have the rights to any of their good characters. When you and I were growing up, the only characters from Marvel people cared about were the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Spider-Man. That was it. They did make other Marvel movies at the time. You know, they made a Daredevil, Ghost Rider, Elektra. They had a few Hulk properties here and there.
A few.
Like there was a TV
like they came
show.
off one every 2 years.
Yeah, there was stuff. But the characters they started the MCU with, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, the core of the Avengers, they weren't that popular. Like the Avengers were they were the C-list team behind the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. Like they were the heroes that, Marvel fans knew them. But once again, Captain America, your average audience member just thought of Captain America like I did. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of a corny World War II relic. So the fact that they even made a Captain America movie in their opening slate was, okay, you're taking a risk here. Let's see what you can do with it. And they turned him into a worldwide phenomenon. Winter Soldier, I think, had a pretty easy task right away. It was the layup. First Avenger was the movie that made us take Steve Rogers seriously. And Winter Soldier just had to not screw it up after that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that movie ended up good. I'm not here to say Winter Soldier is a bad movie, because I don't think it is. I'm not going to accuse it of being bad, but I think First Avenger had a harder job and it succeeded more spectacularly at it. Winter Soldier was just okay. You kept it going and you built on it, but
I agree. This is gonna be a tough debate for me because I actually really like both movies, so it's gonna be hard to be like an actual debate.
They are both in my top 10 Marvel movies.
Yeah. Listen, nothing's gonna top our not How to Train Your Dragon. Fuck's sakes. House of the Dragon
House
debate.
Of the Dragon. The Last of Us Part 2 was pretty heated as well.
That got heated on my end as well, but more.
Just because I said the game was good.
This is going to be an interesting. What? Anyway, and then I played it and I was like, I kind of agree. But anyway, but yeah, my exposure when I first saw the first Avenger, I walked out being like, yeah, it's okay. And then years later, when I when I did grow up, I did a rewatch of everything leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. I was like, yeah, no, this is pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. It had its own sense of style to it. It had a great score, in my opinion.
Incredible. I'll bring that up later.
Yeah. And then after Avengers happened, I hope that they fixed certain things about Captain America, primarily his suit, because it looked like ass in the Avengers. I'm sorry. Especially the helmet. And then the Winter Soldier happened, and I thought it was probably one of the best in terms of action in the MCU, the best movie that I had seen in terms of grounded fight scenes. I mean, they had freaking Canadian legend George St. Pierre go toe-to-toe with Captain America. And back in the day, that was pretty big to be a Canadian and seeing him on the big screen. And just other fights too. There's the little kind of like knife fight he has with the Winter Soldier on the ground. By the way, full spoilers for these movies. They came out over 10 years ago.
I like that little knife flip he did.
Yeah, the knife flip was insane. And I walked into this movie not knowing anything about the Winter Soldier. And that reveal that it was Bucky, to me, blew my fucking mind. I was like, huh? This character who I barely remember from the first Avenger, who I don't really know that actor, that was insane to me. That was a shocker. not so much a shocker for the Marvel fans, but for me, I was like, damn, that's an insane reveal. And I think The Winter Soldier, just before we get into it, overall, I think is a better movie because to me, it's a great spy thriller as well, where there's little bits of what's happening here. There's obviously some shady shit going on in S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, it but the part of when Act 1 ends is Nick Fury getting shot and presumably killed. So you're like, what the fuck is going on in S.H.I.E.L.D.? But yeah. So let's get into it.
I'm going to counter you there and say that The Winter Soldier is a great spy thriller, I will say. But that doesn't necessarily make it a better movie. I think Captain America: The First Avenger is a really solid World War II movie. In the same vein. They're going for completely different genres. Vibes. Yeah. Winter Soldier is a spy thriller. First Avenger is a World War II movie. Winter Soldier deals with moral grays. First Avenger is more black and white. And we can get into the positives and negatives of both sides. I know which one I tend to prefer, but it's... Where do you want to jump off from there? I don't know. I'll bounce off the next thing you say.
Well, it's so difficult because I actually like both these movies.
You know what? I don't know.
I just feel like the first one is formulaic, but it was formulaic when it wasn't formulaic. It wasn't popular to do those types of formula movies. And it was one of those movies, it was the movie to come out before the Avengers.
Yeah.
I remember that. So it was like the last main hero to show up before everybody gets together. And then everyone saw them in that Super Bowl ad and got insanely, whoa, holy shit, they're all together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the pacing is a little slow at the start. It takes a while for him to become Captain America. Whereas in The Winter Soldier, he just is Captain America from start to finish.
Can we say he hits the ground running?
Yeah. Haha. He does all this shady... there's all this shady shit that's happening around him, but he is just fully Steve Rogers all the way. He is that character. He's this big, giant buff dude. And like you said, he's running past Sam Wilson. But he's still cordial with them. He still interacts with people very politely. He's got the best manners I've ever seen in my life from an American guy from World War II.
Yeah.
And Winter Soldier introduces a lot of great new characters to show up later on in movies. And, but yeah, you go ahead.
I'm going to counter you there and say that one of the appealing bits of Winter Soldier, like you said, he's already Captain America right from the start. I think the important thing about the first Avenger is that he is also basically Captain America right from the start. Steve Rogers is the kind of guy who will jump on a dummy grenade, who he didn't even know it was a dummy grenade. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Tommy Lee Jones whips out the grenade in the middle of the training party and he dives on it. Nobody thinks anything of this scrawny weakling who... The thing about Steve Rogers... I don't
like that scene.
You don't like that scene?
No, because why would you want your guy to choose as a candidate be the first one to immediately commit suicide right away? It just doesn't make sense.
It's self-sacrifice. It's character building. To
Whatever.
me, the thing about First Avenger is that Steve is the only Avenger that I can think of, especially at that time, who was a hero all along. He stands up to bullies, enlists to fight in the army. He's the only Avenger who needed not the reason to be good, but merely the power to exercise his innate goodness. Tony Stark was self-absorbed. Thor was also
self-absorbed,
and way overly cocky. Hulk had all this anxiety and fear of himself holding him back. His
self was absorbing him as he was.
Yeah. Steve Rogers, once he became Captain America, he never changed. He was always the same guy, and that was the point. But now he had the power to live up to his biggest potential, which is part of his character arc. And he does get a little cocky in the middle when he's finally getting praise. And, he kind of pisses off Peggy Carter because of that. But the Winter Soldier, he doesn't really grow or change a lot, which is also part of the point of that movie. He's the steadfast ideal, which everyone's got to change around, and I respect that. But I like the character arc more of everybody. I think the world, if the point is that the world is supposed to change around him, I think it changes more drastically in the first Avenger, when everybody sees him as just this weakling who can't do anything because he's small and has asthma and he's not a good soldier. But that's not the point. One of my favorite scenes is when Erskine describes why he chose Steve. It's like you were saying, like, well, why would you want the guy who's going to commit suicide on the bomb? And Erskine explains, the serum was not ready, but more important, the man, talking about Red Skull, the serum amplifies everything that's inside. So good becomes great. Bad becomes worse. This is why you were chosen. Because a strong man, who's known power all his life, may lose respect for that power. But a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion. Whatever happens tomorrow, you must promise me one thing, that you will stay who you are. Not a perfect soldier, but a good man. And that's the point. Steve Rogers is the guy willing to throw himself on the bomb to save other people.
You give Stanley Tucci one scene and he becomes phenomenal.
Yeah. And that's
You've
the
done
point.
it again.
That's the point of Steve Rogers. All the good soldiers ran away, tried to save themselves, to fight another day. Captain America threw himself on the grenade just because it might save other people. And that's the point. He had the heart of a hero, even if he didn't have the fortitude to be one at that time. So that makes you immediately root for this guy. He's just a good man with the power and motivation to help others. So he doesn't have the self-destructive tendencies of Tony Stark, the emotional doubts of worthiness, the insecurities like Bruce Banner, or any of the other handicaps which hurt the Avengers. I also like that scene later when Red Skull asks him, "What makes you so special?" And he says, "Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn."
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's true. It's so weird comparing these two movies because they're so different in terms of not just tone and themes, but just also how they are shot. Where First Avenger, while you're watching it, feels like someone telling a biopic in a weird way. Like it's a very
right?
Sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of, you're watching as if this is what you would think this person is in its highest regard.
Right.
Whereas Winter Soldier, it's very grounded in, hey, this guy is a military guy. He goes on these special ops missions to take out certain bad guys in order to protect the United States. And it's very grounded in terms of its action, in terms of its characters. Whereas the first Avenger sort of feels like a dream sequence. I mean, the first time you see him in the full with the circular shield, he's busting through the doors with his
in slow motion with the pistols.
Yeah, slow motion with pistol.
And doesn't that scene transition into doesn't that scene transition into like war,
a montage, I think,
of war films, and it cuts.
Yeah,
like, he's back in the theater watching movies of himself.
Yeah, it's very like dreamlike in a way.
Yeah.
I also love just, I guess it's all the Avengers, but mostly Captain America. He just straight up murders people. He's fighting a war, obviously, but he's not afraid to just. Yeah, he's not afraid to just bust a cap in a random Hydra member's head. Especially in, I mean, this is why I put Winter Soldier in such high regard. He's brutal in the Winter Soldier. I mean, he drops down onto the boat, lands on a guy, kicks him, throws him to the ground, but that's not enough. He takes the shield off his back and throws it at the dude that's already on the ground, probably destroying the guy's spine. It's just, you're just sitting there going, and everybody's reaction watching it every time is just, oh my God. Just because the brutality that this man has against his enemies is insane. But he's also a nice dude, you know, who wouldn't mind going for a cup of coffee with a nice young lady from time to time. And also,
Or-
but he doesn't have time.
or that nice young lady's niece, as the need
Yeah.
arises.
Yeah, that arc went somewhere. Wink. It didn't.
Not at all.
Didn't go anywhere. They left her alone.
Because people knew it was weird. You know what? So,
Well-
you know what? Winter Soldier sets up Sharon Carter as a new love interest for Steve. And all but kills off Peggy Carter. They make her old, have Alzheimer's. And they're like, oh, Steve has the potential to move on. And then, you know what happens at the end of Endgame? He doubles back around and ends up with Peggy in the end because they got his love interest right the first time. Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter is, for my money, the best
Perfect
quote-unquote love interest in the MCU. She is the only one who was cool enough to get her own spin-off show just from her one appearance in the first Avenger.
That's true.
Nobody else was deserving of a spin-off like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just gotta find my...
It's also their chemistry too. Haley
Their chemistry
Atwell and
is
Chris
incredible
Evans is
as well.
It's insane.
And what I like about their relationship is it feels pretty earned because she fell for him first as Steve Rogers, the weakling, not Captain America, the hero. And he in turn fell for her because she was a capable soldier who nobody took seriously because she was a woman in the 40s, but he took her seriously and she noticed that. It's like, hey, you respect me even though I'm a woman, and I respect you even though you're weak. Like they saw the good and potential in each other very early on. And even when they reached their peak potential, that just made it even better. But actually it made it worse for them because then like Steve was doing missions all the time and couldn't really be with her, and he got cocky and pissed her off because like he was flirting with all the girls. Like, oh, you're Captain America. You're so hot now. And he's a little bit like, oh, girls have never been really interested in me before. And I love that scene where she takes the shield and shoots him. Okay, it works.
Yeah. I think it works.
She's badass.
Yeah. Fun fact, the girl Chris Evans makes out with, where Peggy gets jealous of, is Natalie Dormer before Game of Thrones. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, but just think about the ending of Endgame, right? That's one of the only movies to ever make me actually cry. Like, I was a mess at the end of Endgame when he finally got that dance with Peggy. And that was a payoff 10 years coming because it broke my heart at the end of First Avenger when he crashed his plane into the ice and he had that locket of her and he was talking about, hey, we should get that, we should go dancing sometime or have a date. And she agreed to it. And then he went flying into the ice. And then when he woke up, it's like, well, Cap, what's wrong? And it wasn't the adjustment in the modern world that got him. He was just looking around. But the first thought on his mind was, I had a date. Peggy was the first thing on his mind when he woke up, even though he was still adjusting to the modern world. He's like, what's this? Neon lights and craziness. And I'm in New York City in the modern day. But he's like, oh man, she's probably dead now or really old. Like I lost my chance to be with the woman I love. And that always felt so tragic to me, even when I was 12 or whenever that movie came out. And just to see it get actually paid off 10 years later, no MCU love interest has actually got me that invested. Not even Pepper and Tony. They lasted a while, but...
And I know there's some people that the haters of Captain America's ending for Endgame. They're like, well, it was just this random woman he met back in the 40s. Shouldn't he get over it? It's like, well, you've clearly never been in love. So chill out.
And it's not like they were together for a few weeks. I think that movie takes place over a while.
Yeah.
It takes place over like a couple years of the war, I think.
There was a montage. So
yeah.
Who knows how long their relationship was together.
They worked together closely.
But yeah. One thing I think Winter Soldier has in its favor, if we're going to talk about two lead chemistries, is Captain America and Black Widow. I think it's a very different type of relationship. It's more of a work husband, work wife relationship where, they're both attractive people. They'd be great together, but they're not necessarily attracted to each other. I know in some iterations of the comic books they do get together, and in some adaptations, in some animated properties they get together, but they're just kind of two coworkers who are trying to break down what the hell is going on in their organization. She's keeping secrets from him, which he feels is a huge betrayal because they were in the Avengers together and they're supposed to trust one another. Why does nobody trust Captain America? Probably one of the most morally, great people that's out there. I mean, even Nick Fury had his own secrets. He's done some shady shit. And coming off of the Avengers, where you were shown that S.H.I.E.L.D. is the good guys, the Avengers are the good guys, and then you get into the Winter Soldier, Nick Fury's done some shady shit inside of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there's some shady people within S.H.I.E.L.D. as well.
Yeah.
I mean, why did they attack that boat? It was to make sure that S.H.I.E.L.D. secrets weren't exposed to the world. And that's where I think starts the spy drama. That's where the spy drama starts, but that's where it hooks you in immediately. And a lot of superhero properties nowadays are really having trouble hooking audiences right away.
Yeah.
And I feel the Winter Soldier hooks you into its story a lot faster than the first Avenger does.
Yeah.
Just in my opinion.
All right. Well, in terms of his partnership, his main partner in the movie who he works with, Natasha's great. She has a great chemistry with Steve. But you know which partnership of Cap's defines him in the entire series? Him and Bucky Barnes. Right from their opening, he's getting his ass beat in the alley. His best buddy, Bucky, basically his brother, comes up, saves him, enlists in the army with him. They fight together in World War II in I think it's the Howling Commandos, or whatever they were called. They have all these things together, and then he watches him die before his very eyes, getting thrown off the train. Breaks his heart. We wouldn't give a crap about the Winter Soldier in the Winter Soldier or Civil War. The entire Captain America trilogy is based around the relationship between him and Bucky. That's the partnership that defines Steve's life more than any other.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets set up in the first Avenger. And in terms of the bad guys in the first Avenger, it's interesting that S.H.I.E.L.D. is to blame for a lot of it. It speaks to the moral grays of, okay, well, we're not in World War II anymore, and it's kind of interesting that, oh, well, maybe an American institution is the bad guy now, and he doesn't really know how to deal with that. But I like the simplicity of Hydra. Everyone knows what Nazis are, and everyone knows immediately the consequences of the Nazis if they win. It's like, oh man, we can't let Nazis win. We know how oppressive and brutal they are, and they commit genocides, and Nazis are evil, and we know they need to be defeated. They're oppressors. Captain America is a symbol of freedom, of American patriotism and democracy and all the good things about the world. It's a very classic kind of conflict, which we can all get behind. It's the moral grays alienate people. They cause debate. Was S.H.I.E.L.D. really the bad guy? What were they doing? Was Steve Rogers or Nick Fury right to do this or that? No, we can all get on the same page. Hydra's awful, and Captain America's totally in the right here. And Hydra's also a villain interesting enough that they brought them back in Winter Soldier. That big reveal only works because we knew how bad Hydra was in the first place, that they've infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. and been influencing them for years, which is not, I don't want to say it's entirely true to history, but we talked about in Indiana Jones 5 how it was a thing where Nazi scientists kind of came over and gave up the information they knew.
Changed their names and shit.
Yeah, they still participated in Western democracy even after the war. And so it's kind of playing into that, how, yeah, they were there the whole time influencing. And that, once again, you don't understand that kind of conflict unless who cares Hydra took over S.H.I.E.L.D.? Oh, we care Hydra took over S.H.I.E.L.D. because we know they're Nazis and we saw him fight these people before. It feels like a grand return. But even worse this time now, because they're embedded in the institutions. But we got to know the threat in the first place, and the first Avenger establishes all of that. And what I like about Hydra is that, to borrow a quote to borrow a quote from Falcon and the Winter Soldier,
clip that.
I'm making a point. They're not robots, aliens, or wizards, but human beings. They're grounded in our world's history. Most Marvel things make the mistake of, once again, robots, wizards, aliens. They're fantastical. But like when you see Captain America punching a Nazi in the face, you know that's just like, we know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get behind that. It's not this existential threat. It's tangible. It's real, and it has consequences that the real world has seen. Winter Soldier is more like, okay, they're infiltrating this clandestine spy agency, which the greater world at large doesn't really know anything about anyway. I can't relate to spies. Maybe my grandmother was in the military in World War II. Like she was part of that conflict. Some of us have relatives that fought Nazis. It's like this is
as you did back in the day.
Yeah. It's like we can get behind this threat more. Even though the other one's more mentally provoking, this one is like, yeah, this is just a version of history. So
yeah, it's so interesting because the reason I'm having trouble contrasting and comparing, because First Avenger is so stylized. To me, it's very stylized because it's making a World War II movie, but adding some style into it where it's showing the epicness of these characters in it and these heroes in it. Whereas in The Winter Soldier, it is very grounded. It's grounded in modern day politics, modern day action, modern day military, especially when Nick Fury and Captain America are having that conversation in the hangar and they see the helicarrier for the first time. And Captain America is basically, this isn't freedom, this is fear. You know, you can't control the world by fear. And Nick Fury is like, well, we have to be the ones to build it first, or someone else will. And that's very true to a lot of shit that's happened in modern day. So
yeah,
it's very tough for me to compare these two movies. And to go on your point, which is so tough to beat, where it's like, well, they had to build off this. Yes, I get that. It's an unbeatable point. However, what they do build off of it, I think adds... Where am I going with this? I think what they use to build off of that and add into the Winter Soldier storyline made it so interesting and was so shocking at the time that it makes it better, which is a weird way of saying it. Like, the entire thing of the first movie was basically SHIELD Prime versus Hydra Prime.
Yeah.
And then you cut to, 80 years?
About
Not
80,
even, probably a bit less.
It's like 70 years.
Around that time, you cut to modern day, where you find out Hydra has infiltrated SHIELD over time. That twist with freaking Matrix Toby Jones in the old-ass computer, and it's Black Widow there and Captain America this entire time. You're like, holy shit, why are the good guys evil? Or this is why they're evil. I mean, that elevator scene in The Winter Soldier was so iconic, they had to do a reference to it in Endgame, where he's fighting the SHIELD agents. And you're just baffled by what the hell is going on. How can the good guys be bad? Only because the bad guys infiltrated the good guys throughout the years. Did that happen in real life? I don't know. We can't say.
We can't say. That scene in the elevator also referenced, in Endgame, that super controversial comic where Captain America said, "Hail Hydra." But they did it in the best way possible.
Best way possible.
It's so good. Mm-hmm. I love that scene.
I remember when that comic came out, I remember Chris Evans said something like, "I'm really disappointed." Like, he said something like, "This is not Captain America."
I believe Chris Evans, if I recall, had an Instagram video where he ripped the comic in half. Just as a
Just full
statement.
muscled out.
And if I were, the problem with that is, well, A, people didn't read the story. They didn't know where it was going. They just had a knee-jerk reaction. Second problem, the knee-jerk reaction was also kind of right. Because Jack, I don't know.
Spoilers, he was a sleeper agent. So it's not really...
I'm not 100% sure about Joe Simon, but I know Jack Kirby was Jewish. Captain America's creator was Jewish. So to have him say, Hail Hydra, and ally himself with the Nazis, a lot of people said, that just felt like disrespect to Captain America's creators.
Oof.
Just like doesn't matter where the story goes.
The
just
amount
the fact
of
that you
memes
have
that came out of that image alone were hilarious. Where people were adding in a different superhero and then just putting in a line that was like the opposite to them.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. I can't even think of ones off the top of my head, but they were so
you'd have
funny.
Maybe you'd have Batman be like, I love anarchy.
Something like that.
Or let's put a smile
when did
on
that comic
face.
come out?
That was like
Was it
2017, 2018.
Yeah. I remember when it came out, just that image was posted everywhere.
Yeah.
Just nobody... It was so controversial that it left like comic book news and it became... It was on national, media. Like... it was on like mainstream media. I guess nothing much happened in 2017.
No.
I'm thinking about it. No, nothing really. Nothing insane I'm thinking about.
Not that bad.
I bet there's some insane historical event that happened in 2017 that I'm going to get called out on. Anyway.
I don't remember much personally, but... So to your point about Captain America, the First Avenger being more stylized versus timely, I think that it makes it more timeless, its stylization. I think of the color grading in particular and that beautiful golden tint that it's got as opposed to the Winter Soldier's boring steel blue look. It's dreary. It's like concrete gray and steel blue. I hate it even worse in Civil War. It's
not that bad.
I hate those color choices. Captain America, the First Avenger pops. It's got this golden tint, which I find perfect for a Golden Age hero. You give the golden tint. And I think the gold works because it subtly makes us nostalgic for a bygone era where the lines between good and evil were a lot simpler. It gives the movie a sort of romanticized feel, like an old classic adventure movie. And because it's set in this era, we understand because it's a period piece. I never was alive during World War II, but it's like, you know what? This is a movie that anybody can enjoy. Whereas The Winter Soldier is very much rooted in modern politics and our fears of surveillance technology. I feel like it's going to date itself and already has dated itself more. You're going to look back and be like, yeah, this was a product of people's fears at the time. First Avenger is pretty much always going to hold up for what it is.
Interesting. I'm not going to touch on the color grading. Because yes, I will concede that color grading is one of the Russo brothers' weaknesses.
Yeah.
In terms of they just like simple. Anyway. It's funny because I haven't seen either of these movies in a long time, but I've seen them enough where it's like I know about them.
That's why I wanted to do this one, because I'm like,
yeah,
I know these movies inside and
we
out.
know them.
I've seen them too many times.
But that reveal, reveal of who is the Winter Soldier, and that whole it's a spy thriller, and try to figure out what the fuck's going on with Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. But you're also trying to figure out who's this Winter Soldier who straight up just murders Nick Fury, or who you think murders Nick Fury, and then later on it's revealed, no, it's fake. But just like, holy shit, they just killed off Samuel L. Jackson. They've done that like 5 times since. And then just whole mystery with the Winter Soldier. And as a guy who didn't know much about the comics, I was shocked when it was Bucky Barnes. Probably the last thing to me, besides Infinity War and Endgame, that wasn't spoiled through media, like social media, just of like whose identity this person was, and just the brutality of the Winter Soldier. Whereas the new MCU villains, They say they're brutal, but they're not that brutal. I mean, the most brutal person I can think of recently is the guy from Secret Invasion, where he actually does straight up murder people.
Gravik.
Yeah, but the Winter Soldier is the first one that I can remember from early on, who was just brutal from the start. Yes, he was a sleeper agent for Hydra. The star-studded cast again. I mean, Sebastian Stan, again, Chris Evans. You got new people. You got Sam Wilson with Anthony Mackie. You got Robert Redford coming in, a Hollywood legend, as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., but then he turns out, no, he's one of the heads of Hydra. You get that guy who hated on Tony in Iron Man 2. He shows up here. He's a member of Hydra. Holy shit, everything's connecting. You get that random dude that Black Widow, kicked over the edge. He name dropped Stephen Strange for some reason.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Just all these little bits and pieces of, after the Avengers movies, where do you go from here? And the Winter Soldier was one of those movies that actually helped build this franchise better. It just made it this could go on for a few more years.
I don't know about Robert Redford was the one who kind of played the premise, and Winter Soldier is a better villain than Red Skull because he's got more of that complex dynamic. But the problem with Winter Soldier as a character is that I think that plot line kind of it derails the main point of the Winter Soldier, funny enough. Because to me, the point of Winter Soldier was about the fear of the technologies and surveillance, and is our government oppressive now? Captain America fought the Nazis, he fought bad people so that America could have freedom, and now, like he said, modern America is more like, this isn't freedom, this is fear. You're just keeping people in line. This isn't what I fought for. That's the main point of Winter Soldier. But the actual Winter Soldier himself doesn't really tie into any of those themes. He's just a brainwashed assassin who's a relic. He's kind of doing the same man out of time thing as Steve Rogers, but they don't really explore that. He's just a tool used by the bad guys until he isn't, and then he gets his memory back. It's an important emotional tie-in for Steve, and it's a good story, but it muddies the themes of that movie. Whereas the first Avenger, the villains are a little bit weaker, but also the point is still very clear. It all goes down to Erskine's speech about what the serum is. It makes good better, it makes bad worse. Steve was a scrawny guy with a good heart who became better, and Red Skull was an oppressive asshole who became worse thanks to it. And the lesson is pretty clear. What's in you is at your core will only amplify. And some people are meant to be better, some are meant to just get worse. But the fact that you start off physically weaker, that's not the determiner. And that's it's very clear what the first Avenger is about. Winter Soldier, a little less so. There's too many things pulling it away from the main point.
Well, so that's why you got to turn on your big boy brain. You got to turn your big boy brain and use your thinker. All these little plots here and there doesn't make it worse.
I'm just saying they're there. They're good plot points, but it's just from a storytelling perspective, they kind of, okay, what is this movie about? You go up to somebody and say, what's the first Avenger about? You're going to get a simpler, quicker answer than what's the Winter Soldier about? And I think that's important just for any art. You need to be able to find, why am I watching this? What am I supposed to take away from this? And the Winter Soldier's got a lot of good ideas, but they don't come together as seamlessly as the first Avenger, I think.
Interesting. I don't know how to combat that.
You say the Winter Soldier is cool, and he is.
He's got a cool mat. His arm design is cool.
I'm also going to combat your point about the Winter Soldier setting up all these plot points for the MCU. it didn't really end up doing a whole lot more with them. Bucky showed up in Civil War. That continued that story.
It's not the Winter Soldier's fault. It's like the Force Awakens argument.
It continued that story.
Blame the predecessor.
And the Hydra reveal basically went nowhere outside of that movie. It kind of messed up. It kind of took out S.H.I.E.L.D. just as a group. You never really saw them again. But it didn't really play out anymore. You never saw like Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents hunting each other. You never saw this spy war that was brewing. Those consequences weren't really fleshed out later. But I look at the first Avenger, and to me, scene 1 of the first Avenger, Red Skull finds an Infinity Gem. It's the first stone of the series. And you see with that Infinity Stone, what does this thing do? It fuels his technology. It's a very powerful artifact. You see what can be done with an artifact like this in the wrong hands. And Howard Stark gets it in the end. And that sets up the rest of Phase 2 and 3, basically, leading right into the Avengers and going all the way up to Infinity War and Endgame. It set up the freaking Infinity Stones. It set up the whole Infinity Saga, really. I mean, Iron Man and Thor and Hulk, they were the first characters, but Captain America, the first Avengers, what set up the whole story going forward, really, and set up the stakes for it right away.
I hear what you're saying, but that's kind of unfair for, just to, like, to me, it's like The Force Awakens. They did their best to set up something. It's not their fault that movies after them didn't take from their plot points as well. I mean, it is true, they didn't really do the Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. thing kind of at all until, like, Nick Fury comes back at the end of Age of Ultron, but even then, S.H.I.E.L.D's not really a thing. It's more so Sword, I think, at that point, but it's not really stated.
Sword is still okay, I think. They're just the space branch.
Right, yeah. But
S.H.I.E.L.D. was like, S.H.I.E.L.D. is domestic.
Fully come back,
yeah. It's like S.H.I.E.L.D. is the domestic shield for defense, and Sword is like, we're going out into space and, not gonna get attacked first. Where...
Yeah.
Sword
and I feel like part of me wants to say that the Tesseract, nobody knew for fucking sure that was a space stone. Like, nobody, they were just like, here's this cool little gem thing, and they're like, hey, what if this was an Infinity Stone? But, they did what they did in Age of Ultron, so to make it, hey, this is an Infinity Stone now.
I also don't know if they had it in mind where Red Skull went when he got sucked into that stone. Because I always wondered about that. I'm like, what?
I thought he just died.
Well, I assumed that, but I'm like, what happened to him exactly?
What an absolute shocker when he shows up in Infinity War. You're like, huh? And you're also like, that's not Hugo Weaving? That's an impersonator?
Hugo Weaving's so good, though.
He's very good at playing sort of the over-the-top but also complex villain at the same time. He does over-the-top and subtlety very well. And not to say that Red Skull is over-the-top, but he's got his...
He is a little over the top. And I will admit he's a one-dimensional villain, comparatively. But that's also kind of the point of the first Avenger. This is Golden Age. This is Golden Age heroism. It's very clear black and white morality. The bad guy is very clearly irredeemably bad. The good guy is very clearly just an awesome person. And it's like good and evil are very obvious. And the Red Skull was never meant to be more than a threat that's just... Like I said before, we know what Nazis are. And he's basically just there to showcase what does the Infinity Stones look like in the wrong hands. Oh, what if someone even worse than Red Skull with bigger vision got one of these? That'd be nuts. Is, I think, the main function of him. But he's serviceable in that movie.
Who you have in mind, Joe? A big purple man, perhaps?
Malekith.
Oh, no. Oh, God. He did get an Infinity Stone, which was Infinity Mist at the time. It doesn't
matter.
Yeah. I think the thing that ties me back to the Winter Soldier immediately is just the action. I know they're different styles, but the grounded action in Winter Soldier puts it high above in my MCU list, because it's not just Captain America throwing the shield around a bunch of time. It's also him doing a lot of hand-to-hand combat, not just with predominantly with the Winter Soldier and that one scene with George St. Pierre, but also just with other goons. He's using the shield as hand-to-hand combat as well. So is Black Widow. The gunfights in it are well grounded. You can tell everything that's going on. And that end fight between him and Bucky is not only filmed just excellent, but it's also such a high emotional stakes for both of them. It's Bucky, he's starting to remember who Captain America is. He's starting to remember Steve Rogers. He gets a little bit brainwashed to kind of do the reset, but there's still a part of him that's itching to fight, but he can't fight his oppressors because it's going against his programming. And when he is just beating the absolute shit out of Steve Rogers, and his face is getting all swollen because he's using the metal arm to kick the shit out of him. And then there's just that pause of like, do I end it here? And Steve Rogers is like, I'm with you to the end of the line. And then it's the flashback and they all fall into the water. It's just this insane, not insane, but it's just this such an emotional ending in terms of character, where in the first Avenger, it's just this very stylized, the hero saves the day and does sacrifice himself, but he's not gonna. There's an Avengers movie coming out. He'll be fine.
For me, it's still the most tragic ending of the whole MCU. I never felt that strongly about, Winter Soldier was nice, like, he got through to Bucky, but him not getting that date with Peggy after all that, and like, for all intents and purposes, it was a sacrifice. Steve Rogers was dead and buried for 80 years before he came back. Captain America died saving New York from that bomb. He just so happened to come back, but when he went down, he fully expected to die. By the way, going back to the grenade, I just thought of this, but that was foreshadowing. He threw himself on the bomb to save the day.
Couldn't he have called a pilot though, and just and that's a joke. That's a joke critique, because then a movie wouldn't be a movie. But everyone's just like, couldn't he have just called someone to help him land the fucking plane?
It's always couldn't you have when you analyze
Why didn't the Eagles take Frodo to the Mountain Dew? Anyway.
Look, I don't think the serum enhanced Steve Rogers' intelligence, okay? He is what he is.
He's like a barbarian, but with a little bit less intelligence.
He's got high strength, decent intelligence.
High charisma. Very high.
For sure.
Dexterity through the roof. I think he's broken the
strength and dexterity is very high, yeah. Wisdom, he's got high wisdom too. Intelligence a little less.
But, I don't know. Can we just all agree that the best interaction between him and Iron Man is in Age of Ultron, where they're cutting wood?
Yeah, I like that bit.
He rips the wood. He's like, "Don't take from my pile." It's the great joke. It's just it's like two brothers just jawing at each other. Anyway,
it's sowing the seeds for Civil War.
Yeah, you say the best relationship is Peggy and Chris and Captain America. No, it's Captain America and Iron Man.
They're pretty good too. But that's Civil War, and we're not defending that movie today.
I will defend it one day.
We'll talk. Whoever the comments decide wins this one, we'll do another debate. We'll do either First Avenger or Winter Soldier versus Civil War. Whoever wins will take the opposite side.
You always sound so much smarter than me in these debates, but I'm just whatever.
It's because you're going more off the cuff. I have notes.
And you're very passionate about the First Avenger too.
Avenger.
It's whatever you prefer, right? Do you prefer the stylized origin story? Someone get their dog under control. Stylized version of this superhero, or do you prefer the more grounded spy thriller of this certain superhero? It's so weird. And people how are they two different? How are they that different? Well,
they're completely different.
One is by Joe Johnston and one's by the Russo brothers. Two very different directors. So
that's true. I think it comes down to taste, because to me, I find that a lot of people who love the first Avenger aren't as big a fan of the Russo movies. They say, oh, wow, first Avenger got me into Captain America, and I never felt like the emotional highs were there again. The stylized part of it got too grounded, too brooding for its own good. It lost the sense of fun and adventure that the first one had. And then the Russo fans tend to be more like, oh, well, morally grounded Captain America in a morally complex world is more interesting. He's got to be the steadfast idealist in a world that doesn't really accept him, like this golden age heroism. And it challenges him a little bit more, we'll say. And the grounding is like, oh, well, this cheesy 1940s superhero in red and blue spandex, we don't have that. This is gritty hand-to-hand combat and gunplay and assassinations. It's like it's more real in a way, and so I get it. It's just funny to me how fans of one style aren't really usually like, you're not a Captain America fan. I feel like most Captain America fans do not like the whole trilogy, but they tend to like one side more than the other. You're either a First Avenger fan or a Civil War Winter Soldier fan. Not usually. You don't usually love all three.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, though, whatever iteration Captain America, Chris Evans' version is in, his character doesn't deviate from who he is ever.
No.
He's always the Golden Age hero. He's always the, Boy Scout. He's always the guy who's morally right and everything. Even in Civil War, where people who say technically he's in the wrong because he's going against government's decisions, even though morally the government's decision to ban these people's right to choose whatever they want to do from his 1940s brain is wrong. He's true to his character in every iteration of even when he starts to swear in Endgame, he's still Captain America, the one everybody knows and loves.
He's changed a little bit, but he's still the same guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's fed up. I loved the part in Infinity War where he's talking to General Ross through the hologram.
Yeah.
And he's talking and he says, I'm done begging for forgiveness and I'm done asking for permission. It's like, we're here to fight, and if we have to, we'll fight you too. And he's the way he says it, yeah, he's just done with the government, but he still says it in weirdly respectable way. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, I will fuck you up. Like, in the most respectful way he could ever say.
Military chain of command, all due respect, but I'm not military anymore. So
yeah. I think he still calls him general. Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's a military guy.
Yeah.
Also, rest in peace to that actor, General Ross, as well, who died, I think, in 2020.
Yeah, a couple years ago. I think they recast Harrison Ford with him, who hasn't shown up in the movies yet, as General Ross. Which, all right. We'll see how that goes.
In the brave new world.
So one of my favorite things about First Avenger, which I did mention pretty close up top, this is the movie that made me take Captain America seriously. And I think it did a brilliant thing with the way it handled propaganda. Because Captain America was literal propaganda from World War II. Yes. Issue number 1 of Captain America was a star-spangled man punching Adolf Hitler in the jaw.
That was like one of his first covers, wasn't it?
That was the first cover.
Yeah.
Number 1. So it's like, okay, this guy was clearly created mostly just to sell war bonds and get people enlisted, and we're Captain America in real life is the equivalent to Steve Rogers watching those war films.
That scene, because I was a dumb kid watching this, tricked me when like Hitler was sneaking behind him and was going to shoot him. Was like, oh no, it's a Nazi spy about to kill him. I was like, oh, it's a stage performance.
I think that was partially the point. It makes you
it makes you think like a little bit.
So what I think was interesting was the first act of this movie plays with propaganda. Steve Rogers is introduced watching a propaganda film and enlisting in the army because of it. Propaganda, like in real life, it drove a lot of a lot of men and women to join the army, fight the Nazis, to fight the good fight. And Steve Rogers is a part of that. So it's funny that in real life, Captain America was a propaganda machine that got people to enlist. And in the movie, he's influenced by propaganda to enlist. So it grounds him in reality. Steve Rogers isn't just this propaganda symbol. He's a guy who can be influenced as well. So it's like, oh, well, we're not seeing Captain America, the square-jawed hero. We're seeing Steve Rogers, the man who's influenced. And he's fighting because he believes this is right. And he's just an everyman who wants to stand up to bullies. But then what I think is interesting is that the movie makes him become propaganda. We have that USO show montage of him in the cheesiest red-blue suit, like red, white, and blue suit.
With the wings.
Punching Adolf Hitler every night, giving inspiring speeches, selling war bonds. This is the most brilliant part of the first Avenger to me, is they gave us the Captain America movie we all feared the Captain America movie would be in this USO show montage. The movie's making fun of our perceptions of Captain America, the character. But the best part about it is that Steve Rogers feels the same way. He's like, I know I could be doing something better. I don't want to just be propaganda. I want to act. I'm a guy who wants to make an actual difference. And the audience by this point, having seen a humanized Steve, we don't see him as just propaganda anymore. We're like, yeah, this is wasting his potential. He could be doing actual good. The movie made us take him seriously before they even got to the red, white, and blue costume and the action. So when he actually became Captain America, it felt rewarding and not cheesy and lame like it so easily could have been. And then he goes, and his first action as Captain America is to disobey orders and get the soldiers home and save Bucky. And that's also a bold choice. Like, Captain America, this is the guy who'd be like, follow the law and respect your elders and stuff. And he's like, no, he just disobeys Tommy Lee Jones and disobeys orders. We're like, oh, Cap's actually kind of a rebel. He's cool because he follows his moral code instead of the law of the land. Yeah. He'll go against even his bosses if they're not doing what's right.
He disobeys orders, and then he's immediately promoted to captain.
It's a fake.
Well, he's got superpowers, so.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the design of his final uniform in the first Avenger.
Yeah.
How it's more
military.
Sort of the style of military around that time, and the helmet itself, where it's like an actual helmet.
Yeah.
Was that influenced by like a recent comic, or was that just helped influence the redesign of Captain America since then? Because he doesn't really have much of like the wings popping out anymore.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with all comic versions of the suit, but I feel like that version was created for the movie to ground it. They did the cheesy costume with the wings, and they tried to do it again in the Avengers.
It looked so dumb.
And it looked so dumb. They had to go to that more grounded look again. And I'll take another pot shot against the Winter Soldier and say that the suit was so cool they brought it back in the Winter Soldier once he went on the run.
I know. But they had to bring it back because his like stealth suit got blown up, okay? So he needed a new suit. He wasn't going to wear the Avengers one. I know.
I don't know if I conceded out loud to you, though, that the action was better in Winter Soldier. I agree with you there.
Okay, sweet.
I'm not going to deny that one. It's the choreography.
I know, like that moment where he steps over the hill and he's wearing the suit from First Avenger, and you hear the theme from First Avenger. You're like, oh fuck, it's so good. It's a great moment.
I love the music too. First Avenger is just the word I describe
epic.
It is rousing. Like the music pumps me up. It's like a war anthem. You're getting ready to march into battle, and you're like, hell yeah, patriotism. And it's like I was like, I'm a Canadian, but it's like, yeah, American patriotism. Punch Hitler in the jaw. It's that kind of movie. It just gets you hyped. Yeah. Winter Soldier just makes me anxious.
Are you in Hydra?
Yeah, it's a very different kind of mood. But this is also one of those ones that brings me back to that child sense of wonder about superheroes. It's like, yeah, this guy who's larger than life personality with these really black and white morality stands up against clear evildoers and saves the day with a bit of self-sacrifice for good measure. Is the childlike idea of superheroes. It's the timeless version of superheroes. It's what I grew up on, what got me to like them in the first place. And when I watch First Avenger, I'm brought back to that kind of headspace. Yeah, Winter Soldier's more complicated. It's for, it's for adults. Kids aren't going to get it as much. But I also think it's like, it fell victim to that trend in the early 2010s of Nolan's fault, basically, after he made Batman grounded. Like, hey, let's bring superheroes into a grounded reality. Whereas the first Avenger was like, hey, it's a superhero movie. It's a heightened reality. Let's still have a little bit of fun with it, And it still feels like a classic superhero adventure. I respect Winter Soldier's deviations. It's a great movie, and I'll be honest. I think it's generally speaking a better movie, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah.
It's not the one I return to. First Avenger is my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie of all time, 12 years running. It was when I first saw it, and it still is today. It's not the best Marvel movie ever made, but it's my favorite.
First Avenger is the stylized Captain America version that is treated with respect, that you could tell was made by fans, for fans. That's the film you would want to see. And then Winter Soldier is basically, okay, how do we take that same character, ground him a little bit, but also bring him into the modern day politics? How do we bring him into that?
Which is interesting on paper. It's very cool.
Yeah. It's very tough comparing these two movies because
they're so
thematically
different.
They're so different. Or it'd be way easier to compare the Iron Man trilogy because they're almost like all of them are basically the same, except the third one's a little different.
We can't do a debate. We can't do a debate on the Iron Man trilogy because only one is good. Sorry.
Yeah.
2 and 3 aren't good.
I'm an Iron Man 2 defender, but like in terms of greatness, it's Iron Man 1 all the way.
No, I'll say Iron Man 2, it's not good, but it entertains me. Iron Man 3, I think, is a better made movie, but it bores me. So, and that's worse.
And there's like 3 different Mandarin like twists. It's ridiculous. Yeah. As an Iron Man fan, people were pissed about the Mandarin fake outs.
They did better in
Shang-Chi. In the comic.
They did it okay in Shang-Chi at least.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the actual Mandarin, and he's good. So.
I just wanted to see the rings, man. Anyway, because I think I watched an animated movie of Iron Man, and it had like the ring. Whatever. We're not talking about Iron Man. Yeah. We're talking about Mr. Captain America, Sir Captain America. He's been knighted, even though he's American. Yeah. I don't know how much more I can say. Except that fight with George St. Pierre was really good. I can't like I don't know how much of that fight Chris Evans did, but if he did most of it, I'm really impressed.
If he even did some of it, that's all right.
Also, I'm thinking of Civil War. Someone like I think Black Panther did like a triple kick onto like Captain America's shield. But I think George St. Pierre did like a couple. No, he put the shield away. It's like, I thought you were more than S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like, oh, here we go. Here's the bros fighting each other.
Yeah. Good scene. Good introduction.
And then, and then they wasted George St. Pierre and Winter Soldier. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They brought him back just to fucking... Did he die?
I think so.
I can't remember. Oh, that's stupid.
That whole show is dumb.
Dumb.
Ruined the
Some
legacy.
Good moments, but dumb.
No, I don't want to say ruined it, but I don't mind Falcon as Captain America in principle. I just didn't like the show. Brave New World might be good. I don't even know if I'll watch it. I'm in the same boat as the Marvels. I don't care enough anymore. It doesn't I'll have to see marketing for it. At this point with Marvel, I'm basically
if old man Steve shows up.
Well, then they'd better put it in the trailer and spoil me because I'm probably not seeing it otherwise. It's the same reason I wouldn't have watched She-Hulk unless I saw Daredevil in it. That was the only reason I watched that show. At this point with Marvel, I don't want to see stuff just because I'm brand loyal. They got to sell me like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
If I see something I like in the marketing, I'll go. If not, probably better I pass.
What if... Hold on. What if at the start of Brave New World, you just see a chair, and then you see Captain America sit down like he did at the end of Homecoming? So, you thought you were going to see something great. It's just that whole speech.
That's one of my favorite Captain America moments in the MCU. Let's talk about patience. Sometimes you want something, and it's not worth the wait.
Mm-hmm.
How many more of these?
One of the first like end credit scenes where it's like, yeah, we've run out of things to promote, so we're just gonna say, hey, you wasted your time as a joke.
That was so good though. You wait the
so
whole after, and I've seen a lot of post credit waste scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Basically everyone that counts as a mid credit scene now, and everyone that's after the fact is usually just some stupid joke. That was one of the first ones that did it, and it's still, for my money, the best one in Marvel. Because it was actually a joke about the weight.
Peter's in detention, so it was like, so, you got detention. You screwed up. I was like, oh my god. Like, of course the government would make him do fucking school promotions.
And after wasn't it in Civil War? Like, isn't that guy a war criminal?
Oh yeah,
now?
isn't he? Yeah, isn't he war? Yeah, so you watch this video. He's technically a war criminal, but the government hasn't issued anything. It's Hannibal Buress too, I think too. Oh my god.
I think Chris Evans is the MVP of cameos because I remember he did one in Thor: The Dark World too, when Loki was switching around. Then he's like, "I feel so."
God bless America.
Yeah.
So funny. And just with the context of the movie, like you think it's Tom Hiddleston doing it because you're sucked into it, but just Chris Evans having fun. It's like, oh, wild.
He's incredible. He's one of the best parts about Marvel in general.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel his absence. It was him and Robert Downey Jr. mostly.
Yeah.
Not that
that's what made Civil War so good.
Yeah.
They're both gone. Sure. What the fuck else do you have? The only member of the core six are fucking Hulk and Hawkeye. And they don't ever talk to each other. Well, Thor too, but he's taking a break from acting because of health reasons.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Forgot, but I heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Well, I don't. Like, Marvel's gonna call him. He'll be like, yeah. I mean, he's taking a break, but he's just probably taking a break from everything else.
Taking a break until a giant paycheck comes.
Mm-hmm. All the money that they could have used to pay the writers.
Same reason. Same reason Hugh Jackman keeps coming back.
It's true. He was like, all right, Ryan, you've asked me to come back for fucking 7 years. I guess I'll come back.
He only came back for Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, I forgot to mention, the first Avenger doesn't have any cameos from the Community cast, and the Winter Soldier does. So,
well, that settles it. You win. I can't counter that.
The Russos love plugging in Community cast members. In their movies. They did Abed. I mean, Shirley. Donald Glover, technically, but that's not Shirley. Who's the Dean? I think that's it.
Those are the three I remember.
I know that Greta, she's not like physically in it, but I think she does a voice for something. She provided her voice for something.
I don't know how they feel about putting Joel McHale in because he was the sassy bank manager in Spider-Man 2.
That's what that was.
He was in a Marvel movie.
Mm.
It was just one from
I remember
18
when
years ago.
No Way Home was racking up, and I rewatched the Tobey Maguire movies. I was like, oh, that was you?
Is that Joel McHale?
I love watching movies from 10 years ago and seeing famous actors now and just being no names back then.
And you're like, this wasn't even
fun to see.
Yeah, and you're like, this wasn't even a cameo role. This is just him playing a bank teller. He was a nobody back then.
And Aunt May like kicks Peter, and then she accidentally kicks the bank. Ow! Yeah.
That's so funny.
Alrighty.
First Avenger, Winter Soldier, both good.
Both are great movies. First Avenger, I think, gets too much hate.
Yeah, I definitely. I don't understand why. Like, I think Winter Soldier is. I'll say in a similar vein, I'll say Winter Soldier is pretty rightly praised for the most part. I just don't understand why First Avenger doesn't get more love.
Yeah.
I think Winter Soldier was like, maybe it spoke more to people at the time because it was more timely, like I said, but the action was better. Okay. But, like, Bucky was great.
Does Captain America have the best theme out of the MCU characters?
I love the First Avenger theme.
Yeah.
I can't really think of his theme.
Iron Man's theme is AC/DC. Just the whole, just the whole catalog of their shit. Hulk doesn't have a theme.
The Avengers theme is probably like a theme. The Avengers theme in general is probably the best. Theme,
but just like character-wise, whatever.
Same composer though, actually. I just saw Alan Silvestri did.
Well,
Alan Silvestri did the first Avenger score.
That makes sense, actually.
And the Avenger score. So.
Hey, I know you did the Captain America score. Could you do the entire Avengers?
Can
okay. Hey, can you come back and do the entire MCU? Yeah, okay.
Okay. My thing about the first Avenger, it's the film which set the template for the character in live action. It set up a great deal of story potential for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a great self-contained hero's journey with compelling characters and setting and energy and a good abundance of old-fashioned heroism. It's my favorite film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I had absolutely no expectations for going in, but made Captain America one of my favorite characters in all of entertainment. So, First Avenger is amazing.
It's weird. My opinion of Captain America changed over time throughout every iteration he was in. I think he's been in, 9 of the movies? If you put them all together? Something like that. And First Avenger, you saw him like kind of as the Boy Scout, but just as you got older, you start to understood morally that he was right pretty much all the time. You started to connect with his character a bit more. And I especially felt that way during the Winter Soldier, where all these corrupt people are trying to use him and trying to get him on his side, where he's basically saying, I don't want any part of it. They try to take him out because of it, and he goes, no, I'm going to fight against the government because I fought for freedom back in World War II. This right here is not freedom. It's still people trying to oppress and control, and I'm here to stop it because it's my movie. But yeah, Captain America, great. First 2 movies. Could have been a great trilogy, but, Civil War was popular at the time, so
politics got in the way.
Yeah. But hey, great 2 movies all around.
Well, we could do this all day, but we should probably wrap up.
Nice. You can find me at Ryan Walker Official on YouTube, TikTok, and on Instagram.
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at ThoughtPlay Media. Also, check out the Close Up with Ryan and Joe Facebook page for latest updates on the show. If you listen to us in audio, check out our YouTube channel. And if you're on YouTube, find us anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. We hope to see you on the next Close Up with Ryan and Joe. Till next time.
Take care. Oh no.
It was me throwing the shield at the camera.